Mathus aus Norwegen, der ist Plattformmanager bei KSAT, einer Satellitenfirma, und wir haben heute die Möglichkeit, uns einmal ein bisschen was zeigen zu lassen, ein paar Einblicke zu bekommen in Azure Orbital. Was das ist, wird auch gleich noch erklärt, und ich bin sehr froh, dass wir ihn heute gewinnen konnten für diesen Vortrag, und der Vortrag wird auf Englisch sein, deswegen werde ich jetzt auch einmal zu Englisch rüberwechseln. Mathus, I'm very happy that you were able to attend today. I'm very happy that you could make it for this very interesting topic. I'm really excited to hear about this because it's very rare knowledge that you cannot get anywhere else, that you cannot get somewhere online. So yeah, the stage is yours. You can just go ahead and introduce yourself and start presenting as soon as you're ready.
Right. Thanks for the introduction. I didn't understand the German part because I only had like 1 or 2 years of German at the elementary school, and that quite doesn't cover it. So I hope you said kind things. And if you didn't, then I have nothing I can do about that. So, but
only kind things.
All right. But thanks a lot for the invitation. I'll try to bring up my slide background here. See what I can do there. Aha. Can you guys see that? And I guess I need a verbal confirmation because now I cannot see.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much.
Everything.
So if you actually have anything, or like if you since I can't see you, you would probably have to jump in, or just I'll read the chat later if you have anything there. But
if it's fine for you, if there are questions in the chat, I can just address them in the middle. Yeah. When you are making a pause, I will suddenly jump in and ask some random questions from the chat.
Perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome. Great. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, because since I enjoyed the thumbs up and everything, but I can't see you anymore, and Teams works in the mysterious ways sometimes. So I'll try to do it from here, but as long as you can see my whole screen and you can see the slide in perfect place, everything's perfectly fine. Yeah, and yeah, actually, by the way, check out this one. I'm not sure if you can see that, but I got I got in the Hamburg style. There's a bottle. There's a.
It's blurred, unfortunately.
It's blurred.
I'm
not sure if I can see I can say the name of it, but it's actually called. It's Coke from Hamburg, which I really like. So nice. Every time I pass by, I buy at least a case of these. So cheers to you guys, and with that, we can get started on the Azure and satellites communication. So there was the Azure Orbital thing in the name. We will cover that, but we will also cover how we can sort of extend that, how we can go past that. So as your meetup suggests, you guys work a lot with Azure. So do I. But today we will go way above the clouds. So we will talk from the cloud way above that, which is kind of fun, honestly. So I'm Mateusz. I'm a cloud platform manager at KSAT. I'm also Azure MVP for past 9 years, actually. I think so. So been a while. And what we have today is we will first cover some basics and the theory, because there's a lot of services in Azure that sort of you can get roll with, and you can try a lot of things. The Azure Orbital and the satellite communication in general is kind of not one of them. It's a bit tricky, and you will see that at the end of the presentation. So we will first cover some theory that should help you cover up the basics in terms of what you should set up and how. And we will talk a little bit about the ground stations there. I have a demo of some sort, and we will take a look at the data. So that's more or less what we have in mind and what we have in plan. So first of all, I've been working at Azure since the early beginnings. So in 2009, by the end of 2009, when Azure was in a public preview, and this was how it looked like. So it was called Windows Azure at the time. This is a super blurry screenshot. I don't have any better because that's more or less what the resolution was at the time, I guess. So limited of the technology of my time. So Azure had 5 features at the time. And well, of course, like anything like Azure Orbital or anything Azure Space related wasn't one of them. It was a lot easier to know Azure at the time, and it was a lot easier to say that, like I know my way around those 5 features that were there. So yeah. After that, I went to after many years of working with Azure, it started to spin up quite rapidly, and there were lots of services introduced, and eventually so I come more from like a infrastructure background. I used to work with before cloud. I used to work with service management and automation of all kinds. Used to do PowerShell and things like that. Basically, what we would today call probably a private cloud. I used to do a lot of Hyper-V stuff, VMs, but mainly coming from like this infrastructure kind of background with a little bit of overlaps between like scripting and a little bit of coding, but tiny bit. And then eventually people needed to side up with either going more like Azure infrastructure, or you go more like to the data platform side of things as more services onboarded to Azure, and many different ways. In 2020, I went to the Microsoft Ignite. I believe it. I think it was in Orlando, and I sat there in that conference room, in that the keynote started, and they introduced a whole bunch of things. And they introduced, as one of the things, they introduced like Azure Orbital, connecting satellites to the cloud. And I remember myself sitting there. It was kind of fun to be there with my Norwegian colleague at the time because they were afraid of alligators in Orlando, and eventually we actually saw one. That was a sort of a highlight. It was also in one of the most retweeted stuff in in that Microsoft Ignite part, that there was actually alligator walking in the street of Orlando. And I was just sitting there in the keynote with no alligators, and I thought like, okay, so Microsoft announced Azure Orbital. Like that's probably something I'll never touch. This is when Azure starts to become so big, and and there are trades-off of that, and probably like never gonna get to touch that. And here we are, a couple years later, me talking about Azure Orbital and other things. I found this article actually from that time, which is kind of essential of what I'm going to talk about, because like Microsoft took very partner-centric approach, as Microsoft usually does these things, and introduced in this article, or like it wasn't written by Microsoft, but it was like a press release taken from the Space News. They actually said that Azure Orbital is supporting, and includes KSAT ground network. They said 200 antennas at the time. It's more than that today. And Microsoft actually took this approach to expand. So what they actually did is, on the left side on here, you can see the Microsoft Orbital ground stations. So this is what Microsoft basically built themselves. These are ground stations that they actually own. You can notice that most of them are close to the data centers. So they actually build them on the grounds. They're like very near the data centers that they operate, where all of your stuff is. When you're picking the regions and when you're going through these things, you know that these regions sound kind of familiar. There's one exception to that. There's Chile, that actually is a little bit far from everything else. But the Swedish data center is there. The close to Singapore one, the South African is there, and the West US 2, I believe, is the Quincy in Washington. And they introduced these sites, and they introduced these antennas on these like in very neighboring data centers. So if you actually see the promo materials of Microsoft, you will see the pictures of the antennas. You can actually see the big buildings in the background. Those are the data centers that they have. And when I joined KSAT, we talked about these things, and I talked with a bunch of our colleagues from the radio side of things, the RF side of things, basically like the people who are responsible for our ground network. And they openly mocked Microsoft for that, and they basically said, like, they weren't mocking just Microsoft, but Microsoft came up as one of the names in that conversation. And they're saying like, yeah, they open up the antennas like next to the data centers, like in the weird locations. And I said like, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. And they looked at me and it was like, see, it makes sense to a cloud guy. It was designed by the other cloud guys. And later, as I worked with the KSAT, I kind of understood like why there is this like it's not a bad design, but it's not ideal. So when you look at on the right side of a screen where KSAT actually has these ground stations, you kind of notice that most of them are in this in a like locations where you typically don't have data centers. Like it's one thing to what makes sense to me as a cloud guy, and to have a data proximity and like have a short latency of going into the data center from the antenna. However, these locations are not ideal for like satellite passes, and we will see it later in the demo that if you take it like from a KSAT perspective, like our most important ground stations that we have are Svalbard, which is I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. It's all the way up here. This is like very north of Norway. It's Norwegian territory, but basically it's like very north of Norway. You have polar bears and other things there. So this is the most important one. This is also the biggest one that KSAT has. Another very important one is if you go all the way onto the other side, and there's this Antarctica. There's a troll station. It's a research station founded by Norway, and there are KSAT antennas there as well. It's always very nice to hear from my colleagues who actually go to both of these places. I haven't been lucky enough myself just yet. That if you're going to Antarctica, you actually have to schedule what you're going to do there, and you have to actually put stuff in the container, like a actual shipping container, no Docker. And if you forget something, that is too bad. Like there's no other shipment going on in quite some time. Depends on the size of the equipment. You might be more or less fortunate, but you have to plan thoroughly. So these are the most important ones. Now, when you actually think about the curvature of the Earth, then this is where the most passes happen, because you have this image curved, if you can imagine that, and also the Earth's gonna rotate underneath it. So if you have basically like vertical passes going on, you catch most of them north and south, like closer to the poles. Then you have some other stations that will sort of supplement that, like South America, like South Africa. You also have Hawaii as an important one as you get closer to the equator, because there's like a big gap of oceans from both sides. Avarua in New Zealand is also an important one, but basically like your importance grows as closer you get to the poles. And when you are in like on the comparison, like somewhere in Sweden, for instance, you get significantly less of these satellite passes as the Earth rotates. Like it's not a terrible place, but it's also not ideal place. So that's why most passes happens in Svalbard, and that's why Microsoft basically went right away with extending these ground network capabilities with partners like KSAT. So you can see actually like a KSAT ground stations from the Azure Orbital, and it's important that they are there. Because Microsoft has these 5 locations. Each of them actually has like I think each of them has like 1 or 2 antennas. KSAT has these something close to 300 antennas today. Also, it's not a competition; it's a partnership, and KSAT has been in this business for 20-something years. Tromsø, where my office is that was actually our first ground station. The original site is like still there, although the antenna is newer. But like there's this like a wooden-like construction around that. Looks like some kind of a garden shed around it that used to be like a housing of a first antenna that was exchanged later on. But it's still actually there. So this is like just for a perspective of how things are placed, and why there was this partner discussion, and why I at the beginning I said that it's going to be more about the satellite communication in general, because like a lot of these things apply. In general, Azure Orbital is one implementation of it, which we will take a look at from perspective of like Azure Meetup. But it's important to know that it's not the only option. And like same as for the other things, the antennas that they have, the antennas that we have, they come from the same manufacturers and more or less. Like there's only so many vendors that you can choose from. Our ground network people would probably jump me that they have far superior antennas, of course, because it's about hardware geeking. But like that's we have a few things in common, and of course, like the modems and other components are kind of common. Another important milestone, August 2023. Do you know what happened there? This is when I joined KSAT. So this is a picture from my first day. This is the view from my office. This antenna down there, this one is actually on the place of the first antenna that was in terms of the first antenna that KSAT actually operated. This is like 20 something meter, 21 meters in diameter. It's amazing when that thing just moves and it tracks the satellite. So you can imagine that there's the pass going on, which you can see that it's currently not because there's a bird sitting on top. So the whole thing is stands still at the moment of taking the picture. But when the whole thing moves, it actually shifts and tilts, and tracks the satellite. It passes and it maintains the contact with it. Now the pass usually lasts from like the usable passes are like 8 to 12-ish minutes. Occasionally you get a little bit more, occasionally you get a little bit less, but like this is like kind of the average. And it basically like maintains the contact with it. Like you can see how it tilts and you can see how it points at the satellite the whole time. Now this lovely shade of gray that you see in the sky and a little bit of snow in the mountains, this is what is called summer in terms of. So this was my first day. And this picture on the left, there's Svalbard. This is our largest ground station. This is basically it's very close to the global seed vault. If you saw pictures from there. So this is like this is in Svalbard, and this is where the antennas are. The picture on the right is Antarctica. This is Strelsat, and some of our lovely colleagues from KSAT posing for a picture there. Now, first of all, we kind of need to do the intro into the satellite communication. So what happens and how and how do we need to kind of think about it? So basically, it's information transfer between the satellite and the ground terminal using radio waves, using radio frequencies as a transmission. Right? The type of the communication can be separated into like two different stages or like two different main areas. One of them is the TT&C, which stands for tracking, telemetry, and commanding, and the other is payload data. Right? So I will talk a little bit about all of these, but basically like TT&C typically is like what metadata you have about the satellite mission, what metadata it gives you about different components, and the payload data is why we came here, which is like we want to see images, we want to see files, we want to see basically like the sensory readings that the satellite actually has. Now the ranging is it's a little bit outdated actually. It's basically like a method of like, first of all, before you want to talk to a satellite, you kind of need to know where it is, right? So you point at the right place and you set up your radio equipment accordingly. And this method is basically like that you send a known kind of wave, known signal to be precise, and you're basically measuring a shift from it that represents the time. So based on that, you basically can modify your equipment there. You need to measure the time and need to know the signal that you have sent, and that's how you sort of tracking and arranging the satellite there, which the signal must reach that spacecraft to begin with. If it doesn't reach it, you know that you're way off. But you basically have to do this whole exercise. Now, this is sort of something that is becoming less and less common, so you don't have to worry about it if you actually try it yourself in the orbital side of things, or even if you try it as a like radio amateur. This is becoming less and less common for like for lower orbits, because all of these satellites that we currently have, most of them, they're actually like below the GPS belt, right? So below the GPS satellite. So they will simply lazily take this information from the GPS where they are, and they will happily tell you like all these satellites are actually tracked. There are public databases of sources like where satellites currently are. You can use things that track the sky. Most people do it for sake of looking at different stars, and and another thing, and knowing like position of them. But there are apps, and even free apps, that will tell you like where the different satellites are, where the different where International Space Station is, when will be the next pass, and things like that. This ranging is still needed. However, if you go outside of low Earth's orbit, if you go above that, if you go anywhere above and out of reach of GPS, then you still need to know about ranging. So lunar missions, they needed ranging. Anything in deep space, like Voyager 1, our currently the most distant satellite, and anything geostationary, they still need to do this exercise, and they still need to do the math in terms of testing it out. Importantly, there are also customers that like satellite operators that actually still want to do ranging, and that's often relying on some kind of, or like not relying, but having in mind some kind of like doomsday scenario. So it's mostly like government programs that think of it as like either they don't want to rely on GPS because it's a foreign system, or they basically want to have a backup to the GPS. So ranging is still in the game there. So the RF link stuff. So we have like radio waves. It's electromagnetic signal that is transmitted between the antenna. Those were the pictures that I showed you at the beginning. So these antennas will basically like either send or receive this RF signal, and it's transmitted as a sine wave, or like a collection of sine waves. I will talk a little bit more about that. And these waves basically contain all the information that we are interested in. So just for that communication, we basically divide it into uplink and downlink. So downlink is typically for a payload of satellite data. That if you remember, there's a couple of slides earlier when you talk about the payload. So this is all the imagery, all the sensory readings, and things like that. And it can be parts of metadata as well about the satellite. So satellite will tell you typically on the different frequencies than the payload will. The satellite will tell you also like a state of a database that it has in terms of what power it has, how the batteries are charged, what's the position of solar panels, things like that. Just the basic, what's the health of different components. Yeah. For uplink, it's typically used for that commanding. If you remember the TT&C part, that the commanding part, the C of TT&C is actually an important thing that goes as uplink. This is when we tell satellite what to do. So we take the payload, but we also push to the satellite from the radio signal going from the antenna. We tell it what to do in terms of how to avoid different objects, how to rotate solar panels if needed, how to modify a different equipment if it's needed. So this is typically that our mission control does. And it's also like the most important part is that when you get the launch satellite, when it's right after the launch, then you position the satellite into the right orbit using these uplink frequencies, which is something that happens as well We have this operations center that does these things. Information on these are of course like very protected. It's encrypted in many different ways. It's typically delivered over the very secure networks. You have like clean rooms and stuff like that as a maximum level of security that you can think of. However, the payload data, or the generic state of instruments, like the DB kind of thing that the satellite will tell you what kind of status it has different equipments. These you don't need super great equipment to get that. You can have just like basic radio amateurs kind of equipment, and you don't even have to be super precise where you're pointing, even if you can work your way around that. At least parts of information you will learn from many different satellites, and we will talk about them a little bit later because they are known as public satellites. So as a part of like what's behind the antenna is like very important thing is a modem. Now, modem, in case you didn't know, it stands for modulator and demodulator, and most people actually kind of forgot modems since the dial-up connection to the internet and and the very specific sound that it made, known as the hymn of the internet. But satellites actually make interesting sounds too. You can listen to them. They will sing you same as the ADSL modem used to do, or a similar way. Because these waves, at least at the end of the day, they are actually translated into bits by modems. So typically you demodulate the stuff that the RF link that you receive from the satellite, and you modulate the commanding that you want to get to the satellite so it understands. So the satellite and the antenna, they only speak these RF waves, right? They only speak these signal waves, nothing else. So the way how you actually translate them in more readable data, the first part is basically just like take them into the binary. So you can see that that these waves actually corresponds to like highs and lows, and on a certain frequencies that we will talk about. And this is how you take them into bits, and how we get the information between them. So you can imagine modem as this kind of a bridge between the RF link and the first part of the information that we are actually getting from it. Now the modulation is just a process of just embedding the information into the side waves. So this is how we get the commands there. You can see on these couple of the examples that like you get ones and zeros in it. But it also depends on the bandwidth. If the modulation has bandwidth, then it looks very much different on the lower part of the screen than the one with no bandwidth. No bandwidth basically means no information. They're just like one this wave, and but if you get bandwidth in there, then it has a lot of different frequencies. So the bandwidth is one of the things that we actually have to think about as well. And the last bit of it that actually helps with this process is this front-end processor that actually performs more intelligent data kind of thing. So like our modem turns stuff into ones and zeros, but even the ones and zeros, they can be grouped by different frames into proper data. So you're typically looking into frames, you're looking into framing it, you're looking at filtering it, because not everything that you receive over the radio waves are useful. You can get noise. You can get basically a lot of different things that work on similar frequencies that might distort your received signal. And you trying your best at pointing at the satellite, but you're not kind of doing always the 100% of a job. You get some data, but you're not getting like it's not the best way of getting data. I mean, it's the best way that we know, but it's not as clear as a cable would be. But of course, like for obvious reasons, we can't quite have them. So there's going to be distortion. There's going to be like other frequency. There's going to be like other things. So front-end processor typically makes the data readable, filters out the fillers, filters out the the data kind of grouping. So it has every satellite will tell you like how many channels it has, what kind of information is on which channel, what kind of instruments they actually have. And this front end processor is something that takes these packets and filters them into these different readable data parts. Now, on the bandwidth versus the frequency kind of thing, the frequency, you can imagine is how fast in amount of time different things actually going. So in terms of the modulated signal, how fast things actually are happening. This is what it looks like when it turns into this front-end processor afterwards, like different grouping kind of thing. And the bandwidth is like a range of these frequencies that this modulated signal has. So you basically have typically like a center frequency for each satellite, and this is something that is given to you by a satellite manufacturer, and you basically try to tune your equipment into talking with this properly. The bandwidth is just amount of ones and zeros on that sine wave. So you typically need to know both of these in order to successfully communicate with the satellite. So of course, like it from the other places, the faster the bandwidth and the more data you get, and the speed of it, as bitrate, from other places as well. So there's a way how to calculate it as well, but you will get it for from a different places in terms of the documentation. So the symbol rates versus bit rates, these can be confusing oftentimes. I don't want to go too deeply into this thing because for most satellites, this is like again like something that you can find in documentation. There are these different types of decoder rings. They basically depend on whether you have just like 1 bit in there or 2 bit in there, or like how many bits basically map into a symbol. So this is something that you need to tune your equipment to just in order to know, for how many bits they should be looking for a different signal, a different symbol in it. Otherwise, you're not gonna get the correct reading of your satellite data if this is a mismatch, right? So luckily, we have a sort of a nice and visual way of confirming it. This type of thing, they tell us almost everything about the link, right? So this is a screenshot from a software that basically shows you how the demodulation works, how the process of it, how it goes, and if you basically, depending on how many of these bits per symbol you kind of looking for, it will basically show you the amount of these dots. So basically, like if you go back here, you can kind of see it here as well. So if you basically aim for QPSK, for instance, you kind of look for these 4 dots. Same thing if you look for 8, like they're or it's 16, sorry, it's not 9. So this is how it tells you that you're in the right spot. You're getting as close to the dots as you can possibly get. On the other hand, if you have a lot of noise in it, if like you're getting your signal from all around the places, this is nowhere near that. So you could probably tell that this won't be a successful reading, that you will get a lot of interference in there. If you get any images at all, that you might be kind of lucky there. And then you basically want to kind of get closer to the dots, and this is by you can actually do a lot of things to the RF signal to modulate it, even in terms of post processing, and you can do a lot of things in terms of in filtering it out and tuning the frequency, or you might as well just have no luck and the pass basically was wrongly configured and you can't get anything out. So this was a sort of recap what we talked about on the previous slide there. Now, the last important bit there, or maybe not last, but it's important bit there, is actually that you have this concept of a digital radio. So, like digital, the modems so they're often modem and radio are kind of the same thing. Like they're often called one way or another, but basically like we're talking about the same thing, how to get basically your sine waves into packets. It used to be very common that, like these were hardware boxes, same as it was for any kind of other modems. So digital radio basically is like is just a filtered way of turning this into packets. We typically want to receive, like, especially on our level, from like coming from like IT professionals, we would like really just to use the traffic that we're known for, like we like to talk IPs, we like to talk TCP or UDP if there's no other way. So basically, like, we need to go from this analog processing into this digital processing, and this also allows you to quickly change the configurations of the modem, because I told you that every satellite has a different frequencies, and they have different they basically have a different way of handling data, communicating on different frequencies. So, and you have different frequencies for the payload, and you have different frequency for TT&C. So you typically need to change this configuration a lot. Now, in the older days, it actually meant that somebody had to go and reconfigure the modem. There's a hardware thing. If you're using virtual modems, that means that like we just upload the configuration into that, and it also means that we can host more configurations of it, and we can easily run. Same as VMs simplified the life of anyone who tried it on physical hardware. Then this is the same thing with modems. So yeah, I kind of talked about already that we can simplify the processing there. We can have easier routing. We can support more customers. Another thing is that it also supports like record and playback. So even if something happened to your processing after the modem, then you still can play back the recorded stuff, and you have a sort of a backup of things. Now, in terms of configuration, so let's take what we learned. It was just an intro, and I'm pretty sure that my RF colleagues would jump me for simplifying all that much. But this is more or less what you need to know from the Azure part of things. We will try to look at how we do things in Azure then. So there's a few public satellites that you can talk to. The reason why you need public satellite is that unless there's a satellite operator in the room with us, in which case I'd like to talk to you, of course. But you need to, unless you left your satellite in your other pants, you kind of have to rely on their public stuff. So there are a few public satellites that you can talk to, that researchers talk to, that anyone can just go and talk to if they have the right equipment. And Azure is here in the place of the right equipment. So I picked this NOAA 20 JPSS-1 satellite. The JPSS stands for Joint Polar Satellite System. It was launched in 2017, and it basically, the mission of this satellite is circle Earth pole to pole, providing the full coverage in terms of detecting different temperature ranges, different moisture levels, tracking the also the ocean color, which is interesting even in perspective of different organisms actually living there, like different planktons and these type of things, phytoplanktons. And it also takes a great photos of clouds and clouds coverage. It's actually like if you go on Wikipedia and track a couple of the tropical storms that happened in the past couple of years, the notable ones, the famous ones that they usually come from the satellite. What this satellite doesn't do, and what most of the public satellites won't do really great, and what people usually imagine when we talk about satellites, is that they simply want to go and see like the super high resolution pictures of their houses. That's not really what these guys are for. They will typically scan a very large areas, and they won't go as focused as on that you would be able to recognize buildings, even cities occasionally. So they typically focus on very large areas and do the measuring of a different sensors. There are satellites that, of course, do the very high resolution. I don't know about any that you can talk from the public side of things. They're typically very well kept as a property of these individual satellite operators. You can buy data from them, of course, but these guys, these public satellites are typically like for environmental missions, and that's why also they're public, because a lot of climate researchers, a lot of geologists, and a lot of meteorologists and other these kind of researchers. They need this kind of data. Now, what we're going to know about the satellite, what we're going to need there is a NORAD ID. So that's a specific ID of a satellite that has been issued by NORAD. NORAD actually issues even IDs to not just satellites, but also to like pieces of a space debris. You can't communicate with those, of course, but they just to keep in mind that they have IDs. And you will need to know the TLEs, which is like two-line element. It's called two-line element because it actually started when the satellite started. It was still like early era of computing. So the two-line elements were actually made on the punch cards, and you had like these two punch cards that represented each of the elements, and these kind of tells you about the position of a satellite, where they are, how they inclining towards one side or another, and like details for tracking. You can actually find both of these on Celestrak. So I can just try to go on Celestrak right now. So here we are. And I basically told you that, we need, this is all the NOAA satellite. This is very simple information. I told you that we need NOAA 20. So the very first line is, this is the NORAD ID of a satellite. And then you have a two-line element in terms of first line, second line. Now, in Azure, we can use this information. So in Azure, you typically would create your resource. And you would put here orbital. See? Now, and it actually offers you a couple of things. You can actually filter out those that aren't Microsoft related. So you need basically two of these resources that you probably haven't played around with much that before. So one of them is spacecraft, the other is a contact profile. So we can start with spacecrafting. Is just the resource to represent what your spacecraft look like. And basically you place it in the resource group, same as anything else. It's kind of fun when you think about that your spacecraft is in the resource group with your other resources there. You can name it something that you know. You can pick the regions. Now you can take these regions. These are a couple of supported regions out there. Typically they are close to the antennas, like I showed you on the initial slide. Then you put in the two-line elements. That means like the first line and the second line, and the NORAD ID in there. The links, then you can define the links, which is the center frequency, the bandwidth that I told you, and the polarization you can just pick from based on the documentation that you have for each satellites. And you also specify the links for uplink or downlink. So whether you're going to command your satellite, and it needs to be yours. You cannot command the public one, cannot tell it where to turn, but the downlink you can get. Now, thanks to the magic of television, I have these resources pre-created for you, because another thing that is not very visible from this creation blade, because it's not, you can just like review this will fail now because I haven't filled anything there. But when you are filling all the right details, then you're actually ready to create this. However, one thing to remember, when you create one, it doesn't mean that you can go and you can talk to the antennas. This is very controlled industry. This is very controlled area. So you still need to have your resource validated. There's a special support request for it, that you need to validate your resource, and you need to validate. You need approval to communicate with a certain satellites from a certain ground station. So you basically need to create a support ticket. The catch of it is that you cannot use any other support plan than basic and above. So it's one of the paid plans. You cannot go on the developer support or anything like that. I think the cheapest one is like a couple $100 that you need to pay. So you basically need to take it from the basic plan or above that, just so you can contact the support. and there's a verification process of like talking to that satellite and from which ground station for which you get an approval. Now, for public satellites, it's relatively straightforward because they're public. You just need to have approval for that specific ground station. But for if you would ask for anything else, then they would actually like go and verify your whole paperwork of registering the spacecraft in terms of like whether you're approved satellite operator or not to actually talk to another thing. So this is something to keep in mind. I've done this for you. I actually had to recreate this whole setup in like Shareable. This is my private subscription, so I've done this all for you. Just so this is outside of KSAT infrastructure, just in basic Azure as it is for anything else. I'll show you how it looks like. So I have these JPSS-1 NOAA 20 satellite. Here you can see the TLEs. It's important before you schedule for any kind of contact to update your TLEs. They typically change once a day. So you basically need to go onto Celestrak or other source that you prefer. Celestrak is probably the easiest one, and copy and paste these things in here. Or of course, like in the more production-like environment, you would have an automation for it that does that for you. But this is something that you need to remember to do so because it's important for the tracking. And then we have the links. I told you that like for these links we have defined things for by a manufacturer and approval process. So there's nothing you can do about it. You kind of pick them, but you just have to follow up what the documentation for the spacecraft says. Now we have that contact profile for that. The contact profile basically elaborates on these frequencies and it has its properties in terms of ranging that specific satellite or in terms of basically like communicating on the right frequencies. You have to specify the minimum elevation of degrees of the antenna, which like is typically something low, depending on where the antenna actually is. You have to specify on which band you're talking to it. The X band is typically used for payload. S band is typically used for the TT&C kind of part and the metadata part. And there are other bands that support a lot more data. There's a KA band, KU band, like lots of other bands that basically are today like much more powerful than these two. Azure Orbital doesn't work with anything else than X band, S band. So there's something that you have there. This is your way of directly communicating with the antenna in the different tenants. That Microsoft has these managed environments. You can also, if you're interested, you can actually create an event hub where you get the telemetry from the antenna. So I actually did that, but you won't learn unless you're antenna nerd. You won't learn much about it in terms of other than what was the position in a different time, how the antenna moved. It's basically like for you to have this kind of telemetry. Once you have that, then you can head over to the spacecraft back again because these are kind of tied together. And here's the important part, the interesting part. We have everything that we need for scheduling the contact, right? So here we go, here we are. We can schedule that contact. So you can see that I already done a few. And you basically just hit create here. It will give you the current time. And you need to pick the contact profile that we set that basically says what frequencies to use. It tells the antenna what the configuration should be, and you can pick the ground station that you want to execute the stuff on. You can see right from here that the KSAT antennas are actually here. So this is like this is the integration. This is the partnership that we have. However, you need a license to going into these. So if you need one, you know where to find me. I can hook you up with sales, but the public ones are this, or not the public ones, but the Microsoft owned are the ones that you can get authorization for right away. So I did the one in Sweden, and so this is basically what we get, the time range. You also cannot go like super far into the future. it's not that you can basically schedule, contacts for like a year and go away. Like these things change. But typically, this is something that we have available. And the times are in UTC. That's also to remember, something to remember, right? It gives you the right time right away. And you can see that we will have a couple of times. It will sort out these things based on this elevation that we put in there. So you will see the antenna elevation for each of these, and you will see the contact time for those that how long we will be able to maintain the contact between the antenna and the satellite from this location. And here is also that if you remember one of the intro slides, the map where the location is, you can also you can also kind of see that if I filter it out just for today, or let's go tomorrow so I don't have to edit the time, that there's actually not that many of the passes. So in Sweden, this if you're basically just going today, there's one more pass left today. After that, there's nothing. Like then you have to do. There's one slightly after midnight, or like 2 in the morning of our time. But then you have to do it the other day. Now this satellite actually passes like 14 times a day. It's like so you miss quite a few of these passes, and that's why the location was kind of important, because on Svalbard we would get most of these passes. But here in Sweden, as the Earth rotates, then then we will have like limited capabilities of there what we can do. So basically you can go and you can just hit schedule there. 6 minutes is not a long time. You won't have like a huge data set, but you will get something. I would say 8 minutes is getting nice. 12 minutes is probably the longest point you can get here. 12 minutes is really, really nice. Anything around these 10 minutes, 12 minutes is going to be like lots of data coming out. So yeah, you can then go and schedule that. So we can hit and schedule, and this will basically just initialize the deployment. It will just tell you that like this is thing that's gonna get scheduled. It's gonna be in place. It just doesn't take that while. By the way, all the things that I'm showing you right now are also configurable through the API, Inference code, scripting, CLI, whatever you fancy. It's basically part of Azure Resource Manager API. So if you would have like heavier production in looking at the satellite data, you would typically do it from there, because like this isn't really how the satellite operator work in terms of going to the GUI and clicking the different stuff, but it helps with the representation. You can see that this one is counting the hours till the next pass. Now, what you have to do there is that this will only give you like a raw data. This will be like if you go back to the link configuration, this will only just get you the raw stuff. Sorry, I was already there. Not the spacecraft, the link stuff. So if you go into the link and edit the link and edit the channel of it, then you can actually see that this will talk to a specific IP address on the port that you desire, and it will either do a TCP or UDP based on what you fancy. You need to capture the data. It will just talk. It will just talk to this IP. If there's nothing listening, you're not going to get anything. You can pick either whether you receive the raw data. That means that you're going to have to modulate it yourself, or you can use Microsoft Managed Modem. This is going back to the software radio stuff, where basically Microsoft manages a modem for you, and it even has like a couple of the configurations listed for you. The JPSS one is one of them, and it has other public satellites in it. That these are other satellites. Aqua, it's older NASA satellite that monitors water and the water cycle, the ice, and other things. Terra was released around the same time. It's mostly focused on geological stuff. You can pick these kind of things. Important thing is that you will typically receive like a raw data. You will still receive binaries. For most of other, you still need to process those. It's not like if you actually stream stuff in here, that you would get a folder of images. It's really far from it. So this is what you can set up, and I will just leave this one, and I'll show you what happens next afterwards. So when you let's take it from here. So So we did the demo, we scheduled the contact, and now the important part is that, like I showed you that I showed you basically how many different times were there that we could choose from. So I did this one for you yesterday because I actually had to go for a specific pass for a specific time. So I just had to pre-record a video, although I hate pre-recorded demos. This was the only way how to do it because there was simply no pass around the time when we have the meetup. And another thing is that as later as I will show you, you cannot rely just on one pass. Or like there will be learning curve. So here I basically refresh that specific contact, and I can see that it starts in like 2 seconds. So it's already started. So basically we have it's in the start time. Now here the white screen, I'm terribly sorry about that. Like the screen capture didn't properly got my remote desktop, but what I actually set it up in that on that IP is there's just a VM running Linux that has SOCAT packet capture command line tool running on it. So basically, I'm just listening to that port that I listed on that on the contact profile, and I'm just getting any kind of packets that will hit that port. Now you can do this in other resources than a VM. VM is probably just the easiest one to get and to explain to. You can do it in a container. You can do it whatever. Doesn't have to be Linux. Even if you have like favorite packet capturing tool on Windows, you can do that too. I just use that one because that was probably like the easiest one to get. But you can see that this one is reserved. It's scheduled, it's running properly, and later on I actually had a bit of better luck in terms of this thing was going on, and I think it captured part of my remote desktop. Yeah, there it is. So basically, like the SOCAT thing created this binary file for me. Basically, I'm just exporting into the binary on this VM. You can see that this one already has like 1.2 gigs, and it just started. So it actually like it's pretty chatty. You will see how it grows basically there. So when the contact is just successful, then like it will change from this scheduled part into succeeded, and this binary file will have couple gigs. Depends on which satellite you're talking to, and depending on how long was the pass, then you can really aggregate a couple gigs there for sure. If you have raw stuff without any modulation, you can easily go to like 30 something gigs in one pass, just fine. So this is what we have. Now the further processing of it, you can use there are open source tools. Like typically how it works, that if you actually operate a satellite mission for someone, that they will give you the toolset. There are open source tools for public satellites that you can use. Probably the most popular one is SatDump. It has pre-made pipelines for different satellites, and you can leverage those. It's community driven, so like they have GitHub repo, and this is just to showcase you. This is the kind of image that you would typically get for these environmental satellites. Like I told you that you can barely see cities there. This is like the large chunk of something that you're getting as an environmental reading, right? So like don't get your hopes high for getting super detailed pictures of your garden and house and stuff like that, or like stalking your friends or whatever you had in mind in terms of satellite usage. At least not from the public ones. And you know what? Actually, I tried running a few things there. Maybe I will get to a little bit more of it if I have more time. But basically, like when you run the pipeline through the SatDump, it will create this folder structure for you. This is basically sorted by the different satellite instruments that you have from that. So basically, the workflow was that I took the binary file, I stuffed it into the SatDump, and created a pipeline from there. It basically tells you about the frequencies and different things, and you can start your modulation from that part there. And you have it sorted by different instruments. and you have the telemetry of a satellite typically in the JSON file, and you can take it from there. However, there's a learning curve with that. So it takes a while and the disk space to succeed in this. Because I told you that you can have unsuccessful passes, and you can have your equipment set wrong, and you can have your demodulation set wrong. This is what it looks like typically. You would have a lot of noise there. So this is like completely unreadable image, as you can see. I got close to 100 gigs of those right now just for setting up this demo. So maybe if you're a proficient radio amateur or a radio professional, you will probably have an easier learning curve. I'm really not there. I'm a cloud person, so I can only try my luck and configure things in like shifting frequencies and shifting different things there that I can get for getting the proper view. If you're starting with this, your experience might be very similar. So it takes a while, but most of my data was actually distorted to begin with. If you're getting less distortion, you're getting basically two faces like that. You can tell it something, but what is it exactly? It's kind of hard to say. Also, keep in mind that if you see these pictures from a different from like an angle, or like satellite doesn't have the same angles as you have. Like it's not automatically a map that would have like north on the upper side. SatDump will help you structure these things, but you might get it will help orient them for you because it has like geopositions and other data in it in terms of a different channel and different labels of the data that it had. You might also, not get it as a part of your pass if you set things wrong, as I did several times there. So, I typically at companies like KSAT, we have specialists to do this, and I'm really glad for them because then it means that I don't have to worry about it. But if I set this up as a demo for you in my own subscription, that these things kind of really happen. It's a learning curve there. So it's always fun to see the fancy demos that work and everything. I'm here to show you that things can get broken as well. And probably the tricky part is that you don't get all that much time to fiddle around with it, as you're limited to amount of passes. So if you really want to fine tune your variables, you have like a couple of passes a day when you can fine tune it, and then you have to just wait for the next one. And if you miss the pass, you miss the pass. There's no way around that. However, I was able to get something out of it, at least a little bit, just so we have a successful part of demo. So I got working a couple of images, and my colleagues really helped me out with this to fine tune the right frequencies because I had a frequency shift. Now, if you remember the ranging part, then there's this Doppler kind of thing going in there. Like your frequency is not always your frequency. The satellite moves in the different ways, and the further it is, then your frequency shifts, and the closer it is, then your frequency shifts. So it's really not as simple as Sheldon going meow, but you have to calculate a lot of frequency shifts there. And luckily, I had a help of my friend from the whole RF spectrum basically to get me through this, and we were able to find semi-successful picture there from the couple of pictures from VIIRS, which is like the visible infrared imaging radiometer, and it actually collects data from lands and ocean and atmosphere. It basically primarily measures snow and ice cover. It goes through measuring the clouds for basically like war-related purposes, for storms, aerosol, stuff like that. It also focuses a lot on smoke and fog and other kind of things that you can see on Earth. But it actually helped. These kind of instruments help a lot with detecting forest fires. And the last part is like detecting some vegetation both on land and phytoplanktons in the ocean, because then you can see you can measure the health of it. There are also other instruments that measure just the colors of it, so that you can see more things from there. So I was able to get this. Now I actually have to go through a lot of pictures there. I was really glad to get this one. Now, if you can see that, we still have like not complete images. This was taken. This is like not one image. It's taken from multiple different images, right? But we have still some data noise in it. But the reason why I was glad that I got this one was that you guys should recognize this. This is Hamburg over here. So this is Denmark. This is a part of Norway. Then you have like Swedish East Coast. This is Hamburg right here. So this one actually from the VAERS shows you important information that the sea temperature near Hamburg was around 16 degrees yesterday. Pretty cool, huh? I have no idea how you could live without that information before. And also, you probably can get it a lot easier than going through all of these data that I just had. But it's fun to get to the process. So if you want to get a little bit of a better stuff at it, and you don't, like this is cool to hear about, but you don't, we want to have like process data already. You can get process data from satellites. Even in their raw form, and not necessarily raw form, but you can get it in more like already modulated, selected picture sets and stuff like that. So one of the options is another product from Azure Space, which is Planetary Computer. I can show you that one. And another one is ESA catalog, which is from the European Space Organization. It's pretty common. That one requires registration, but you can get to a lot of European satellites like Copernicus program, things like that. So the Planetary Computer basically aggregates the data from a lot of the different satellites. You can go through data catalog. It has API. So you can see that these are data from Sentinel satellites. We can pick this one, for instance. So this is more focused on terrain. You can launch Explorer in here. And all of this is like visible in the API as well. And you will typically get like these kind of images from satellite. But here you can have it in as a map overlay, with the different labels of it. You can kind of zoom out in there. So here we are in Australia somewhere. But if we go like, let's see if we have something from like Hamburg area. Yes, we do. We have something. So you can also see that these are kind of the older. Not so old actually. These ones are from yesterday. But sometimes you get a little bit older data, like this one, a couple of days old. It depends, because sometimes you don't. Not all the satellites cover everything, or sometimes you have for different instruments you have for optical instruments you have cloud coverage. So perhaps it was clouded and was no use. But then we have a lot of instruments that actually measure. It actually send radio waves and other things that basically penetrate clouds, so microwave radar, stuff like that, that don't care. But for a lot of optical stuff, you will actually also care about the cloud cover. So that's why it doesn't worth your while to go there every day for like different images, and you just somebody picked already the useful ones. Now this one actually has an API as well, so you can create your own workbooks. You can run this samples in Python. You can do a lot of different things there if you want to. Yeah, so this is how to get data, how to process stuff, how to get things. This is all I have for you, actually. I think we are right on time.